Good evening everyone and welcome to the Sony Webcast. Tonight we've invited the YouTuber iCeline to explain us a bit about the APS-C vlogging camera called ZV-E10. She took it on a trip through Spain so she had plenty of time to test it. She's going to tell her story, and meanwhile, if you have any questions, well, my name is Francis and I'll be answering those questions through the Q&A or the chat. So please welcome iCeline.
Thank you, Francis. And bonsoir, my fellow high-tech fans. I am so glad to see you here on this webinar. I'm happy to be here with you. It's a very exciting moment because today, not only will we talk about the brand new Sony ZV-E10, but also we will see all the tips and tricks, how to get around the settings of the camera, and look at the problems and, of course, the solutions. So last time I was here, we talked about the Sony ZV-1. I can tell you I had a great time with you all. I'm not sure everyone knows me, so let me introduce myself. My name is Céline. I have a tech channel on YouTube called iCeline, where I upload once a week on Mondays, most of the times, about tech reviews, tutorials, and sometimes I also do vlogs. My videos are in English and it's only once a week because, yes, I have another job. I'm a TV journalist celebrating my 20th year this year. And as a reporter, I cover a whole lot of topics, not only tech, but my favorite subject is tech. That's why I launched 4 years ago my YouTube channel. Now that we know each other, let's get right into the ZV-E10. And to show you what this camera is capable of, here is a sample of what it can do. Voila. I have so much more footage to show you. I had the opportunity to take the camera to Spain while I was on holiday, and I'll tell you all about the nuts and bolts. The Sony ZV-E10 is an APS-C interchangeable lens camera. It looks like Sony aimed it to the needs of vloggers. First, let's see what's the difference with the ZV-1. The ZV-1 had 1-inch sensor. So 1-inch sensor size sits nicely between smaller sensors found in smartphones and the larger sensor prevalent in mirrorless cameras and cinema cameras. The format is large enough to render a decent shallow depth of field without resorting to extremely long focal length. And it's small enough that powerful zoom lenses don't have to be overly large. Of course, you won't find 25 times or 30 times super zoom lenses for these cameras, but 10 times or 12 times is plenty for most video work. So now with the ZV-E10, we are on an APS-C camera with a bigger sensor. Do you know what the letters APS-C mean? If not, let me explain. APS-C stands for Advanced Photo System. There are 3 different APS digital image formats. You have APS-H, H for high definition, APS-P for panorama, and our little friend APS-C, C for classic. The C format has an aspect ratio of around 3:2. APS-C formats are smaller than the 35mm size, hence the term cropped sensor. Because an APS-C image sensor is smaller than a full frame sensor, APS-C cameras have a smaller area to capture a scene. In other words, the scene is cropped, as illustrated here. With an APS-C sensor, the angle of view is narrower. This creates the impression of being zoomed in more. Although the depth of field remains the same in both cases, the background is sharper. Let me show you. The background is sharper than the same shot taken with a full frame sensor and the same aperture. So by using different image sensors, you have created 2 very different images. The exact size of an APS-C digital sensor varies slightly depending on the camera manufacturer. APS-C image sensor can be found in most digital SLR, mirrorless, and compact system cameras. It's no wonder then that the selection of APS-C lenses and camera bodies on the market is very large compared to their full frame counterparts. Most of the sensors are CCD or CMOS. I'm sure you have heard those words before. So what's the sensor here on the ZV-E10? It's a CMOS image sensor. Bear with me, it's the last part of the theory here, but at least at the end of this webinar, you'll know everything about this camera. CMOS stands for, surprise, complementary metal oxide semiconductor. CMOS image sensor usually costs less to produce than CCD image sensors because existing semiconductor manufacturing equipment can be repurposed for their production. Unlike CCD sensors that use high voltage analog circuits, CMOS sensors employ a smaller digital circuitry that uses less power and are in principle free from smear, like vertical white streak in the image taken under bright light, and blooming, like the corruption of images such as white spots. And from the information I have gathered, it seems like Sony has stopped producing cameras with CCD sensors since 2015. What's the advantage of the APS-C sensor camera? First, of course, it lets you interchange lenses. If you're already a member of the Sony family and have other lenses, you can use both full frame and made for APS-C lenses. There's typically some penalty of cost, of course, and weight by opting for full frame glass, but it's a plus if you are already in the Sony system. To get a wider view with your ZV-E10, you could use this lens. It's the Sony 10 to 18 millimeter. They are very good lenses. We will talk about the lenses again later in this webinar. So the advantage it's the interchangeable lens, and it captures less noise in dim light at an ISO higher than 3200. That's very important when you want to shoot photos or videos in low light. Low light continues to be one of the biggest challenges for camera manufacturers. Let's see what the ZV-E10 can do. Well, as far as I'm concerned right now, I'm not checking the LCD screen too much because I want to talk to you. But I guess it's handling pretty well the low light situation. And all of the footage you're going to see are the footage I'm shooting right now. So in between 9 p.m., 8:45 and 9 p.m. The footage you've seen was shot with a 16 to 50 millimeter kit lens. We all know that the larger the sensor, the better equipped it is for low light. That's generally true on the whole, which is why you will think right away at full frame cameras. But let me tell you, it's also worth considering models with a smaller sensor if you have another factor in mind, those such as high portability. It's also worth thinking about the sensor design too. Sensors which are backside illuminated tend to perform best in darker conditions. And that's great because guess what? We have covered the theory of the CMOS sensor and it has a backlight illuminated sensor architecture. See, I told you the theory was worth it. So for the ZV-E10, we have high portability CMOS sensor with backlight illumination. Talking about portability, the ZV-E10 is light. It weighs 343 grams with an NP-FW50 battery and SD memory card installed. Add in the 16 to 50 millimeter kit lens, and we're talking about half a kilo. Setup good to go. And half a kilo, let me tell you, it's nothing. Because I had footage to show you, but unfortunately, I don't have it here. But so it's nothing because for most people who record themselves with one arm extended out, look, I have it. Oh, you don't see it. I have it with me. Like I did in Spain, the lightweight camera was pleasant. And so that's one thing very important because when you're a woman or, I don't have lots of muscles and, I'm happy it's only half a kilo I have to carry on. About the battery, it uses, let me see. It uses the smaller old style Sony battery and not the ones present in the company's newest full frame cameras. Back in 2013, I have bought the Sony Nex 5R. I don't know if you remember this one. It's great camera. I want you to have a look at what kind of image quality you can have when it's almost dark. So see, that's the sound. I was asking you to look at the quality, but what I really want you to listen to is the sound because it has a lot of 3D dimensional sound, and it's a great camera for the sound. You don't really need extra microphone if you want to vlog with it. So what I wanted to tell you, of course, before the sound is the battery. So the battery lasts 80 minutes of record time or 440 photos, but your mileage will vary based on how you use the camera and the outside temperature. So on-the-go charging is available, but it's slow. So it takes about 3 hours to recharge a nearly depleted battery with a charger, but you're still able to use the camera connected to your external charger, which is a plus. So now back to the sound. The camera has a built-in directional 3-capsule microphone. It provides pretty decent quality audio when vlogging in selfie mode. Let's continue the test. So now you have heard me in a field. It was very quiet. Let's see what's next.
So I'm testing out the microphone of the Sony ZV-E10 in a very crowded area, like here at the beach, surrounded by many people, surrounded by kids who are having fun, and of course listening to the relaxing sound of the waves. I know this camera is not waterproof. I am being extra careful.
So for those wishing to avoid the purchase of additional accessories, it's great news. And the ZV-E10 is sold with a hot shoe attachable windscreen, also known as Dead Cat. Another great addition is the 3.5 millimeter headphone and microphone port, so you can listen to the sound quality while filming or use an extra microphone if you want to. Let's talk about the image quality now. So what I enjoyed with the ZV-E10 is the crisp quality capturing videos in 4K. The footage you have seen so far is filmed in 4K at 24 frames per second. It records 4K footage at 24 or 30 FPS at the same 100 Mbps recording rate, but has a few additional color profiles, including a flat S-Log3 for grading and HLG for HDR playback, which is great. The video is captured at 8-bit quality though, so you won't have as much room to adjust color as with 10-bit footage. While it can capture 4K videos, there's a hefty crop at 30p, but not at 24p. So you should take this info into consideration before choosing the settings on the menu. Talking about crops, you'll see a lot of cropping depending on which options you will choose. For instance, when filming slow-mo footage at 1080 at 120 frames per second, there will be a crop. Great news about slow motion. Remember, on the ZV-1, we only had a few seconds for the slow motion. If I remember correctly, it was 18 seconds of slow motion, and that was it. Here, you don't have limits. Well, the capacity of your SD card is your only limit, really. So let's look at the slow motion video. Yeah, I showed you already many slow motion video at the beach. This one was pretty nice too, but it's shorter. So off-speed recording is available only at 1080p, and it's available in the S&Q slow and quick shooting mode. Right here, you can see the red arrow. You can record at 1, 4, 8, 15, 30, 60, or 120 frames per second with 24, 30, or 60p playback options. You will be able to use 60 times speed fast motion and 5 times slow motion. How to do that? It is just a touch of a button, the S&Q button. Before we jump into the explanation, there are 2 very important details you need to know about the slow motion option. 1, the movie will be recorded in HD format and not in 4K. And 2, the sound will not be recorded. Just in case you wanted to hear your voice in slow motion in your video, that won't be possible. So how do you do that? First, we press the still movie S&Q button to select the slow motion. Each time you press the button, the shooting mode will switch into the order of still image shooting mode, movie recording, and slow motion, quick motion recording mode. Now keep in mind that the playback speed will vary depending on the assigned record setting and the frame rate. If you choose NTSC, your frame rate will go up to 120 frames per second. If you choose PAL settings, it will go up to 100 frames per second. Are you confused? What does it mean that shooting in NTSC is better in slow motion? Let's talk about it so you'll get it right. The American standard for video has long been 30 frames per second for broadcast television. 30 frames per second was chosen for ideal synchronization with the 60 Hz power standard of the United States. This format is known as NTSC. In Europe, the video standard is 25 frames per second due to its 50 Hz power standard. This format is known as PAL. Online video is often uploaded at 30 FPS and sometimes even at 60 FPS for action-heavy content. Online content such as YouTube and Facebook videos doesn't need to adhere to practices of television standards, and likewise, they also don't need to conform to cinematic frame rates. Ultimately, this will come down to the type of content you're creating. If you're filming travel vlogs and want to capture a cinematic atmosphere, you might want to run with 24 FPS or 25 FPS. If you're vlogging or shooting fast-paced action, you'd want to run with a high frame rate to negate the blur from slower frame rate. So to your question, should I use NTSC settings for slow motion? My answer is yes. 120 frames per second is better than 100, right? How to do that? So if you're in PAL settings, and so let's see, here I am in PAL settings. So if you're in PAL settings and you want to switch to NTSC to get a higher frame rate, did it played? Voila. So you're in PAL, you want to go to NTSC. You go to the menu, you go on the little suitcase, and you click on NTSC PAL selector. It will reboot, and then you're good to go. But you need to be aware that footage on your camera might be deleted. So in order to change, just be sure that you don't have any footage you haven't saved yet. Let's start with the NTSC settings. If you record settings at 24p and your frame rate is at 120 FPS, your video will be 5 times slower. If you record setting at 30p and your frame rate is at 120 FPS, your video will be 4 times slower. Now, let's use the PAL settings. If you record setting is at 25p and your frame rate is at 100 FPS, your video will be 4 times slower. That's the higher you can go. If your record setting is at 25p and your frame rate is at 50 FPS, your video will be 2 times slower. In slow motion recording, the shutter speed becomes faster and you may not be able to obtain the proper exposure. If you want to avoid this problem, you should decrease the aperture value or adjust the ISO sensitivity to a higher value. How? By avoiding the automatic program, as it allows you to shoot with the exposure adjusted automatically, both the shutter speed and the aperture value. You have to switch on the manual exposure in order to adjust the exposure, meaning you can control the shutter speed and the aperture. Now, something I really enjoy, time lapses. Creating time lapses is also very easy using the S and Q button. With the ZV-E10 interval shooting mode, you can create time-lapse movies assembled from still shots. The shooting interval can be adjusted from 1 to 60 seconds between shots, while with up to 9,999 shots possible. You can see an in-camera preview of what the finished movie will look like. Then use Sony's Imaging Edge desktop on a PC to put together the final footage. To be honest, I didn't do that. I didn't want to use another extra software to get my time-lapse. What I did is a traditional time-lapse movie, meaning I have recorded in 4K at 24 frames per second, so I don't get crops in my image, for 10 to 15 minutes. Then I will speed the footage up with my editing software. It worked great until the camera was overheating and it just stopped. But I already was exceeding 15 minutes. The high temperature in Spain didn't help the camera to cool down during the recording, although I was clearly in the shadow and not in direct sunlight, thank goodness. So keep in mind that filming in 4K works well, but not too long, and definitely not when it's hot outside. Although I was disappointed to see the camera shutting off, I'm glad it did, because it could have caused component failure otherwise. And now let's talk about the autofocus. The ZV-E10 uses the same autofocus system as other recent APS-C models from Sony, including the A6100 and the step-up model in the line, the A6400. It mixes phase and contrast detection, spreading coverage across the frame. The autofocus is able to track subjects once they've been acquired, and it supports face and eye detection for people and pets. Yes, the autofocus is fast, and many tech specialists consider it to be amongst the best you can find in APS-C camera. Photographers can tap a subject on the viewfinder, and the camera will then track it automatically around the frame. If the subject has a face, eye detection is used until they turn away the camera, after which the autofocus will revert to real-time tracking. For vloggers, the great advantage with the ZV-E10 is that the camera is also tuned to set exposure based on detected faces. This is especially useful when recording video with changing light, say, like here, a walk and talk moving from sunlight to shadow, and for scenes with a strong backlight. If you're starring in your own vlog, you'll want to be properly exposed. Sony still didn't add the touch control to the LCD screen. It does limit your control over the camera when you're both cinematographer and on-screen talent. You can tap the screen to set a focus point, but unfortunately, that's it. If you're recording a selfie vlog and want to make some change or settings between clips, you'll need to get behind the camera and work with the rear buttons. The display itself is excellent. The 3-inch 1.4 million dot LCD is sharp enough to be your only viewfinder and plenty bright, especially if you turn on the sunny weather display setting. It is very handy when working with the camera outdoors on a sunny day. But don't wear your sunglasses.
I don't know. I can't see it because of my sunglasses.
Yes, because they are polarized. Polarized sunglasses only allow light to pass through in a single direction, and your camera screen only emits light in a single direction. Your sunglasses and camera LCD screen end up counteracting each other by working in opposite directions. As a result, you end up seeing a dark or black screen. Yeah. But if that really bothers you because you want to protect your eyes when it's sunny outside, there's a solution. Yes, of course, there's always a solution. You can buy a screen protector designed to work with polarized sunglasses. Now, back to our camera LCD screen. A red outline showed around the frame. It shows around the frame when recording. But that's not new, as some cameras of the RX 100 family also have that option. There's also, and that's very neat, a tally light on the front panel, an additional visual confirmation that you're rolling footage. That's important because, you know, if you think you're recording and it's not, it's just double the work. Let's now talk about a very hot topic. the ZV-E10 as a handheld video camera. Its stabilization in body systems, called also IBIS, are more and more common. But Sony, unfortunately, chose not to use IBIS, but to rely on a mix of lens-based stabilization and digital active shot to achieve handheld footage that's free of jumps and jitters. With the handheld grip that I have right here, active shot is pretty impressive. But it comes at the cost of angle of view. It crops footage to get the job done. Let me show you. So here the active stabilization is on, but with the kit lens 16 to 50 millimeter, you get a close-up of your face. And that's not what I want. I want a wider shot. I could buy a wide angle lens from Sony, the 10 to 18 millimeter, but the lens is at the same price as the camera. So what can we do without spending too much money? My solution is not to use any stabilization. So let's put it off. Then what? Do you know the free software of Sony called Catalyst Browse? Well, it does a great job stabilizing your footage post-production. It does crop, but in my opinion, it's cropping less than the active stabilization. This software lets you browse files from your Sony camera or your card reader. It allows you to view all your clips, edit metadata, and even apply a global color correction and LUTs to your footage. As for the stabilization, the software uses Euro data recorded by cameras such as the FX6, FX9, Sony A7S III, A7C, RX100 Mark VII, ZV-1, and now ZV-E10 to accurately stabilize your footage in post. But there's an info I really want to share with you so you won't do the same mistake as I did. I used the standard stabilization on the camera, and the software wasn't able to stabilize the footage because the video didn't have enough metadata to perform a stabilization. And unfortunately, I didn't know that. So all of my statements were jittery and I couldn't do anything about it. Let me explain. You have three options in your camera for stabilization. No stabilization at all, so let's say stabilization off, standard stabilization, and active stabilization. In order to use the Catalyst Browse software to stabilize your footage, you only have one choice: do not use any stabilization. If you do, and you still try to get the software to stabilize your footage, you'll get an error message saying you don't have enough metadata to proceed. Another solution, but I haven't tried it yet, but I will later this week, is using a third-party wide-angle lens that you can attach to your actual lens. It's cheap, under 50 euros, but it can do the trick while you are vlogging and filming yourself. Who knows? I will tell you. Talking about vlogging, there is one accessory you'll be happy to have with the ZV-E10. It's, of course, it's hard to say, GP-VPT-DUPT. It's a wireless shooting grip. It helps with the stabilization. It's an almost required accessory for handheld use. You will naturally hold the camera steadier with this pistol style grip. Tilt and rotation are supported too. With the grip, shooting vertically is a piece of cake. And what else? Movie shots in vertical orientation can be viewed the same way on a PC or smartphone, thanks to metadata recorded by the camera. There's no need to rotate the video manually. It does it automatically, exactly like on your smartphone. The grip connects to the ZV-E10 via Bluetooth and includes controls to record clips, adjust zoom, and toggle background defocus. Background defocus. This camera is easy to use. especially because it has pre-programmed options. And with a single touch of a button, you are on your way to make cinematic shots. We have learned about the S&Q button. The camera comes also programmed with background defocus, set to a button on the top. One press will enter the mode, and you'll see a nice bokeh behind you. It will open the aperture all the way for maximum subject isolation from the background. And there's also a product showcase mode where objects closest to the camera will be given focus priority. That way, if I talk about something I'm holding in my hands and I hold it out in front of me for a better look, the autofocus picks up on it rather than sticking to my face. I would have loved to test it out for you right now, but I have switched it off. Why? Let me tell you why. Face and eye detection will be turned off the entire time when this mode is on. So when you are done with it, don't forget to switch it off. And because we are live streaming with the ZV-E10, I don't want to push any button because I'm afraid I'm going to switch it off and then I won't be able to see you. Another great feature, this one is my favorite, it's the soft skin effect. The dedicated button is not as obvious as the previous model, the ZV-1. You can, of course, customize a button for it. It's very easy. So exactly like on the ZV-1, you have low soft skin effect, mid or high skin effect. You just need to go into the option settings to choose the one you like. Now it's mid skin effect, which is great. It looks totally natural. It looks like I have slept so well, but I didn't. But you need to know that with some specific options, like when filming in 4K at 30 frames per second, you won't have the option. But at least you know that now. And of course, there it is. You can't miss it, the record button. It's big enough, allowing us not to confuse it with any other ones on the top of the camera. Let's talk about connectivity. The camera includes Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to connect to a smartphone. With the Sony Imaging Edge mobile app for Android and iOS, you can control remotely your camera with your smartphone and transfer files easily. The ZV-E10 includes a USB-C port to connect to a computer for transfer or for use as a webcam. It complies with UVC and UAC standards, so it will work with Mac, PC, and Android smartphones. Now I'm on my MacBook Pro, and it works pretty well. I mean, in the blink of an eye. I mean, it works so well. I didn't have to look for many buttons on the menu. You can connect your computer to the camera and use the camera video and audio for live streaming or web conferencing services. Streaming is at 720p and includes an audio feed. What do you think? Now it's 720p. In my opinion, the quality is it's great. If you want to use 4K video, I think you can 4K, or if you want better quality, you will need a capture card. Just know that the capture card is around 100 euros. And if you want to use 720p, like I'm doing right now for live streaming, you have everything you need in the box with the camera. Setting up a USB live stream for the camera is fairly straightforward. On the first page of the second shooting menu, you will find a USB streaming option. Simply turn this option on, connect the camera via USB-C to a smart device or computer, and open your live streaming platform of choice. Of course, I had the help of Francis to help me out testing the live streaming just to check out if it works well or not, which was great. So from a body design and control standpoint, the ZV-E10 makes a lot of sense. The camera offers excellent customization and handles well as a video making tool. The onboard microphone offers pleasantly good audio. And though the touchscreen is somewhat limited in use, as a means of quickly selecting an autofocus point, it works well enough. If you're all about your vlog or video in general, the ZV-E10 gets more right than wrong. So that's what I thought about it, and I really had a great time testing it during my holidays. So I guess now, Francis, we will have a S&Q and talk about the ZV-E10.
Yes, most definitely. We got some very interesting questions that came from your exhibit. Thank you very much for it. First of all, as you already stated, you can switch between PAL and NTSC.
Yes.
You can't do it on the same card. There's only one camera on the market that can do it. That's the A7S III. So the best thing, if you're someone who wants to shoot both sizes, use two SD cards. That's the safest way to always preserve your footage and don't get any error messages.
Yeah, otherwise you might get deleted footage, which would be a bummer.
Indeed. That's because, well, the camera needs to tell the SD card how to, well, it has to reformat actually.
Yes, it does. Yes.
So, that's why, well, footage might get lost.
True.
Now, you already spoke about the dead cat. We received the question, how much does it cost? But it's actually included in the kit. So you get it.
Yes.
So it's in the kit. So
it's great. It's included.
You can still use external microphones using the jack, the microphone jack, or the digital audio in the hot shoe. But you can just, like Celine did, use the internal, well, tubed, 3D tubed audio, which is pretty good.
Well, the quality was great. I mean, I've chosen a very quiet place at the beach. I mean, kids yelling, and especially the waves and the noise of the waves, and you could hear me quite well. But you can also add a lavalier, a wired, and Sony does a wireless lavalier, which is great too. It should work pretty well with the ZV-E10.
Yes, that means an extra connection piece on the camera, but it works very, very well.
Mm-hmm. And it was out a couple of months ago only, so it's worth testing it with the ZV-E10 if you want to do interviews, for instance, or if you don't want to be too close from your camera. The wireless microphone is a great choice.
Yes, and that's digital audio, which means there's no loss at all. So it's perfect. It's just the sound you record is the sound you get in the camera.
Awesome.
Now, there is a trick for doing time lapses even faster than Celine did. If you go to S&Q and you put it to 1 frame per second and you film it like that, you can actually a time lapse at 1 frame per second, which is already pretty time-lapsey. And then you can even, enhance it by even slowing it down even more. So
I have to test that out.
Yes. And then one last question that arrived. Well, open. So I'm sorry for not answering it in written. So I'm going to just read it. There's someone who finds it very hard to choose between making stills and filming video during, well, I guess during events, because I get the same issue. But in most Sony cameras, starting from the A7 III and the A6400, there's a function called photo capture, which means that in the camera, you can just play your video, activate this function, and cut pictures out of your video. If you're filming 4K, which most people do, you get an 8 megabyte picture. So that's, for web use, it's more than enough. If you've got customers in the event sector who want to put it online, it's more than enough. So it's a nice function to have.
So while you're filming, you can take photos.
No, so you're filming and afterwards you just review your video. You can program it to a button and you can just push it and say, okay, I want this image, or you can pause it and go forward slowly. Okay, no, I want just 1 frame further, 1 frame more, or 1 frame back. Okay, select, you cut that frame out and you got a picture. So
Oh.
well, it's pretty sensitive. It's
Yeah,
a
it
nice thing.
makes things easier.
Yes, it does. So especially for YouTubers who want to have really the best thumbnails for their videos.
Yeah, without taking photos all the time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. So those were the questions. Let's see one more. Oh, no, that's okay. Okay, so those were the questions. I think the rest was very, very clear. Thank you very much, Celine.
Well, thank you, Francis. I had a great time, and thank you for letting me play with the ZV-E10. It was fun, and yeah, the quality, everything was great. I really had a great time, and live streaming. To be honest, I plugged in the ZV-E10 to my computer 5 minutes before the live stream, the webinar was starting. So it's not as if, I struggled a long time before getting things done. It's very easy to live stream. I never did it on YouTube, never, because I like things to be prepared. But I think I'm going to try it out now that it's so easy and the quality footage is amazing.
I want to say thank you to everyone who has watched. Thank you, Celine, for, well, all the
My
work,
pleasure.
nice presentation, and all the videos you made. We love videos, so thank you very much. And I want to say thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening and see you next time.
Bye.